Bonjour Bethan, ça va?
Bonjour.
Ça va, ça va. Uh, so we're going to be waiting for the others to join.
Okay.
Some may be absent today. I know that two students will not be there, so I think we'll start if once more people come, so in about 4 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming in.
it's good.
Bonjour Bella, ça va? Bonjour Félixinho, ça va? Can you hear me, Bella and Felix Nino? Well, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello. Oui, ça va.
Bonjour, bonjour, ça va?
Bonjour. Ça va.
Ça va bien. Okay. So as I told Bethan previously, we're still going to wait a couple minutes for more students to come. So I think that we'll be starting at 5. Okay, so in about 2 minutes. And the others who aren't there yet will be joining while the class is going.
Bonjour, Bethan. Ça va?
Ça va, oui. Ça va?
Ah, merci.
Okay. Bonjour Chiara, ça va?
Bonjour, ça va? Et toi?
Ça va, merci. Okay, I think we'll be starting off because it's almost 3:05, okay? So we're going to be able to start right away, okay? J'espère que vous allez bien. Ça va, hein? Okay. So today we're going to continue what we saw last time, but we are going to change of unité, okay? So both of the last time we saw a number of things. We saw how to kind of introduce yourself to someone, okay? And we also saw how to introduce someone to someone else, okay? So I'm going to share my screen for today's class. Okay. So can everyone see the PowerPoint that I'm displaying? Okay, great. So This unité is called parler de soi. C'est quoi parler de soi? Does anyone have an idea of what that possibly means? Parler de soi. An idea, maybe, Bethan?
I know parler is speaking, talking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the soi is.
Soi is myself. Okay. So basically talking about myself. All right. Okay. Bonjour Donna. Okay, so we're going to talk about ourselves, okay? And the first kind of objective of this class is talk about loisir. Does anyone have an idea of what's loisir? The image on the PowerPoint kind of hints towards what it is.
Is it hobbies?
Hobbies, yeah. So les loisirs are hobbies, okay? So we're going to learn a bit about the vocabulary of the hobbies in general, okay? We're going to talk about how can we express a taste towards something, if that's positive or negative. And on that last point, we're going to talk about the negation because on Tuesday we didn't have time to learn about the negation. And again, we're going to review what we saw on Tuesday. So the genders, feminine, masculine, and the third person, il et elle. So basically that's what we're going to see today. Okay. So on va commencer en se demandant si ça va. Ok. So, comment ça va, Bethan? Ça va?
Ça va bien, et toi?
Très bien, merci. Tu peux demander à quelqu'un d'autre dans la classe?
Oui.
Très bien.
Bella, ça va?
Can she hear us? I'm not sure. Well, you can ask someone else if you want to.
Ok. Félix, ça va?
Oui, ça va, Bethan. Et toi?
Ça va.
Yes.
Sierra, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci. Bien, ça va?
Can you hear us, Donna?
Oh yes, I didn't get the name, sorry.
Yeah.
Oui, très bien. Et toi? Bethan? Kiara? Sorry, Bethan. Yeah.
Oui, ça va.
Okay, so we've gone kind of full circle, so we're going to end there. Bella, if you can hear us, which I'm not sure you can, maybe try to disconnect or reconnect if things aren't working out. Okay, so about last time, what we did see, okay, we saw a number of things. Besides the basic introduction, we learned about le verbe être. C'est quoi le verbe être? Does anyone remember what is the verb être?
To be?
To be, yeah. So a very important verb for or to learn French, okay? And we also saw the verb s'appeler, okay? So basically, when someone says je m'appelle, you know that he wants to say his name, for example. Okay. So the verb être is going to be used quite a lot. Okay. So who wants to start? Or maybe someone can start to kind of present maybe. So, what is a camarade? Qu'est-ce que c'est un camarade? There's a word in English that is very transparent with camarade. Any idea, someone? So comrade, so classmate, basically. Okay. So I'm going to start off here. For example, I'm going to present Bethan. So I'm going to start off by saying elle s'appelle Bethan. Elle est anglaise. Okay. And then Bethan, you're going to maybe like ask someone else if you're not sure about her or his nationality. You can always ask for sure. Okay. So go ahead.
Il s'appelle Felix.
Mhm.
I'm not sure on the nationality.
Je suis nigérien.
Il est Nigerian.
Nigérien. Mhm. Ok, très bien. À toi, Félix. Felix. So it's your turn to present someone and maybe ask about their nationality if you're not sure about it. Mm. Can you hear us, Felix Nino? Okay, so, well, we're going to move on, okay? So, maybe Donna, you can ask someone.
Oh, my
Oh,
mic
your
was-
microphone was mute. Okay, so
yes.
you can go ahead.
Il s'appelle Loga.
Mhm.
Il est indien.
So did you say il or elle?
Elle,
Okay.
elle indien.
Ok, très bien. À toi, Loga. À ton tour.
Et toi, Loga?
Can she hear us? Probably. If you're trying to talk, your microphone is mute, so it's going to be a very complicated. Okay. Well, we're going to skip. Okay. So what about you, Donna? Do you want to present someone in the class?
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Who is left?
There's
Okay.
Chiara. Mhm.
Elle s'appelle Chiara. Elle est, I don't know the nationality. Quoi nationality?
Mhm.
Australia?
Australie is the country, okay? For the nationality would be Australienne, okay?
Australian. Okay, so elle est Australian.
Okay, très bien. Okay,
À
and
toi, Chiara, right?
yep, good. So maybe Carrie, you can finish off.
Can I introduce you, or is there someone I'm missing?
Yeah, you can introduce me. I don't think that Bella and Lage can talk.
Okay. Il s'appelle Adriel.
Il s'appelle Adriel, okay.
Il est français.
Non, très bien. Il est français. Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Merci beaucoup. Ok, alors, on a vu du coup la troisième personne, the third person, okay? We saw how that kind of works out. So here on the screen, you can see a kind of a reminder of the verb être and its conjugation, okay? Which is very different from English, at least. Okay, and lastly, we did saw how we did saw another verb, and Al maybe to introduce like the possession, okay? So about the possession, so what is the verb here? Le verbe avoir.
To have.
To have, yeah. So I have an example written here. I'm going to read it to you, okay? Donc je m'appelle Adriel. J'ai un frère et une sœur. Mon frère s'appelle Mathis et ma sœur s'appelle Apolline. Okay? So here you can see both the verbs s'appeler and the verb avoir. Okay, which means to have. Something important about, well, maybe presenting someone or, well, in this case, someone in your family, which is very important, is the article you're going to put just before maybe your brother or your sister. For example, we saw for, well, the basic numbers that for un et une, it was different depending on the gender of the person or the object. We saw that un is masculine and une is feminine, okay? And then once we go into the other numbers, there weren't any notion of masculine and feminine or a difference in how you write them, so it was quite okay. Maybe Felix Nino, you can try to kind of do the same thing as I did with my sentence. Je m'appelle Adriel, j'ai un frère et une sœur. Peut-être que tu pourrais présenter si tu as un frère ou une sœur. Maybe you could try to present like how many brothers or sisters you have, if you have any. If you don't have any, you can just use the number 0.
Très bien. Je m'appelle Félix Nino.
Mhm.
J'ai un frère, j'ai un frère, une.
Mhm.
J'ai un frère.
Non,
Et,
j'ai un frère.
ok, un frère.
Mhm.
Et 4 sœurs.
4 sœurs. Okay, très bien. Okay, very good. Be careful about, for example, brother. It is a masculine noun, so you would use un and not une. Okay, so for example, in that case, you can see that, well, there's nothing here just after the n in the word un, so we wouldn't hear the letter n. However, when we have the letter he here, we can hear the letter N, but we can't hear the letter E. So basically it would be, it would sound like une, okay? Who wants to give it a go? Maybe Donna, Kiara?
I can go.
Okay.
Je m'appelle Donna.
Mhm.
J'ai un frère.
Mhm. Très bien.
Mon frère s'appelle Dipayan.
Mhm.
That's it.
Très bien, ok. Comment est-ce que tu dirais que tu n'as pas de sœur du coup? How would you say maybe that you don't have a sister?
Oh, yeah. Je n'ai pas something that we discussed last time, I think. Je n'ai pas.
Mhm.
There's deux sœurs, I think.
Yeah, that was correct. Très bien.
Oh, okay.
This is something that we're going to see a bit deeper here is the, well, the formation of the negation, which
Okay.
is a bit tricky as you said it. So for example,
Mhm.
if you don't have any sister or brothers or things in general, you would use je n'ai pas de, etc. Okay. Merci, Dana. Okay.
Thank you.
So that was really good. Okay, so we're going to move on to well, the thick of what we are going to learn about today. So, les loisirs. Alors, les loisirs, so we saw that it was the hobbies, okay? So we're going to read a short dialogue, okay? So maybe if some of you are, if some of you want to participate and play the dialogue together, it would be really nice. And then we're going to kind of highlight every word that is linked with the vocabulary of the hobbies. Okay. So who wants to read as Paul and who wants to read as Marie? Any
I
volunteers?
can read as Paul.
Oh, okay.
So maybe Felix Nino, you want to be Marie?
No problem.
Yeah.
Je n'ai pas problème.
Je n'ai pas de problème. Très bien.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. Bonjour, Marie.
Bonjour, Paul. Comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci. Je vais à la piscine. Et c'est quoi, vous venir avec moi?
Ah, non, la piscine, je n'aime pas trop.
Ah bon? Quels sont tes loisirs alors?
J'aime la danse et la escalade.
Mon oncle fait de l'escalade, mais moi, je n'aime pas trop.
Et toi, quel est ton sport préféré?
Moi, je fais de la natation et de
Natation.
l'équitation. Natation et
Ok.
de l'équitation.
J'adore l'équitation.
Ok, très bien.
Okay.
Très très bien. Merci beaucoup. On va revenir sur quelques aspects. So we're going to kind of look back at certain aspects, okay? There were some words that kind of gave you some trouble. So for example, l'escalade. So Felix, you kind of told it in a English accent where the A is kind of pronounced as A. In English, if you look maybe at the pronunciation of the French alphabet, you would see that the letter A makes the sound A. Okay, so basically, you would say l'escalade. Okay. Another word that kind of gave you some trouble was well, oncle. So it's the same thing as in many words in French. The E is totally mute. For example, you would say oncle, and you would end at the letter L. Okay. And for the last word, there was kind of a problem. Is this one? Donna, can you try to maybe read that word?
L'équitation.
So we're going to look back at it. So I'm going to write it in sort of a phonetics way, okay? So usually when you see a word in French which has the Q and U, it would be pronounced as the letter K. So like équitation, okay? And for the last part with the T-I-O-N, it's basically like a S, okay? So l'équitation, okay? Does it seem clear to everybody? Yeah? Any question about any words maybe for now?
Can you also help with natation?
Ah,
Natation. Oh,
natation.
natation.
Okay. So the letter A in French, it's different in English, as in many vowel letters would have a different sound depending on the placement in the word, okay? Here, the letter A would only, if it's alone, it would only be pronounced as A. So for example, you would say nata, okay? And for the T-I-O-N, so the pronunciation here is sion, okay? And this is a pattern that you will recognize in many words in French. It's the same thing as in English. You would have this kind of pattern, okay? And you
So
pronounce,
why,
yep,
if this is natation,
natation,
why is
yeah.
natation, and then why is the other one équitation?
So it's a typo on my part. It would be like a équitation with a S.
Ah, okay, same, okay.
Yeah. So it's the same thing here. The letter, well, the pattern, we call it a suffix. I'm not sure how you would pronounce it, or what is the word in English, a suffix. But basically, kind of a group of letters that come to the end of a word to kind of modify its grammar category, okay? So it's the same thing here. Whenever you see that T-I-O-N, T-U-N together, it would pronounce as sion, okay? Yeah, same in English, totally. Okay. So about the words that were important. So did you notice maybe any words that were important here about the vocabulary of hobbies and sports?
Piscine, maybe
Piscine?
swimming.
So, for example, piscine, what is piscine? C'est quoi la piscine?
Pool, swimming pool.
It's swimming pool. Yeah. La piscine. Okay. So is it masculine or feminine? La piscine.
Feminine?
Masculine.
It's feminine because there's
Oh.
la. Yeah. Thank you, Kiara. La piscine. Okay, so we know it's feminine. What other words did we have that were kind of the keywords here?
Dance and escalade?
Danse et escalade. Okay. Danse et escalade. D'autres mots? Some other words maybe? So the two words that were giving you kind of problems with natation et équitation, okay? So does anyone know what does that mean? Natation et équitation. So natation is the activity we do à la piscine, okay? So that's swimming. And équitation is horse riding, okay? Danse, everybody knows what's danse, okay? It's dancing. But what is escalade?
Climbing?
Climbing, yeah. So that's something that is becoming really big in France, climbing. Okay. Also, I underlined certain words in the text. So we have je n'aime pas and j'adore. What are those words about? What do they mean?
J'adore is I love. Je n'aime pas. I don't like.
Yeah, so that's the negation. So what is the root, kind of the root or the structure of a phrase with negation? Maybe you have an idea, Felix, Nino?
No.
Okay, so we're going to look at it a little bit later then. Okay. So, for the hobbies, generally speaking, in English, how would we like maybe try to say that you practice maybe a sport that isn't a game in general? What verb would you use?
Doing?
Doing, yeah, doing. And that's basically the same thing as in French. For activities, we have a categorization in 2 columns. So for now, we're going to look at doing, which is what verb is doing in French. Just underlined it. This is Bethan, an idea maybe of how you would pronounce the verb?
Faire.
Faire. Okay, très bien. Faire. So we have faire. Okay. Faire is another verb. Okay. So you have a kind of a square where you can see the conjugation that is going to be important here. Can anyone try to give it a go with the conjugation? So je, tu, il, elle.
Je fais, tu fais.
Mhm.
Il fait,
Il
elle
fait.
fait.
Très bien. Il ou elle fait. So you can see here that we don't hear the S, we don't hear the T. So it's basically the same pronunciation as in every person, even though the spelling is different. So je fais, tu fais, il ou elle fait. Okay. Donc on a par exemple, for example, we have a sentence here. Je fais de la course et du surf. Okay. Because this little part here is going to be really important. Basically, what would be this sentence in English? Does anyone know? What does it mean in English? Je fais de la course et du surf.
Mm,
Yeah, you want to try? Tu veux essayer, Félix Nino?
okay, I know I do
Mhm.
a course.
Alors, course, what
Mm,
could it possibly be?
de la
So la course, running, okay?
okay.
Running and surf is transparent. It's surfing, okay? So
Okay.
basically, in English, the sentence would be I run and I surf, okay? Here, we have je fais de la course et du surf. So what are those little green word here? De la et du. So in French, we call them articles partitifs, okay? So those articles here are to kind of specify a quantity of something, the quantity or the gender. Here, what do we know about the verb or the noun here? Because it's a noun, course. and surf here too. So what do we know about the noun here? Is it plural? Is it masculine? Is it feminine maybe? So who could answer for the first word here, course?
Feminine?
It's feminine. Why would it be feminine?
There's la.
La, okay. And maybe for surf, we have du. So the contrary or the opposite of feminine is masculine. So surf is a masculine, well, a masculine noun in French, okay? And course, donc la course, okay, is a feminine noun. Okay, so we'll put an F and an M just besides there, okay. This may be a little confusing as in English, common nouns don't have any gender. So that's just something that you are going to have to be kind of acquainted to, okay? So I've written a little square here, à mémoriser. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? C'est quoi à mémoriser? What does it mean, à mémoriser? Any idea, maybe? Mémoriser is kind of transparent with English.
Memorize.
Memorize, okay. À mémoriser. So I've put a little, yeah, memorize. Okay, so I've put a little square here. So when we talk about an activity, in this case, sports, that aren't games, we use the verb faire, okay, before the activity. It's the same thing as in English, where you would use I do instead of I play, okay? However, there's something that is a little bit tricky because after the verb, you have to use the article du, de la, ou des, okay? So I've written an example here again, je fais du ski. So ski, the verb or the noun ski, is masculine, okay? So you would use the article du, okay? Does anyone want to maybe ask or give in some ideas about activities and sports to kind of get used to the vocabulary?
I just had a question. Like
Yeah.
usually in English, the article is a and the. So do, de la, they, these are, what translations are they in English?
So it's different because for activities or maybe like nouns and or maybe verbs in general, you wouldn't see articles. So that's why maybe in the phrase or in the sentence je fais de la course, we would just say I run or I do running, which is kind of unusual to encounter. So here, du, you may encounter it as kind of a indicative of a certain quantity. So it would be some or any. But in that case, it just specified the gender of the activity. Okay. Maybe you have some ideas of activities or sports that you want to try to know if their noun version is feminine or masculine.
Acting, singing,
Alors,
dancing.
singing, du chant is masculine. Le chant, okay. La danse is feminine.
Okay.
And acting would be in French jouer, kind of the same verb as to play. It would be le jeu. which is again masculine.
Feminine.
Masculine.
La is masculine, right? No,
Le
sorry,
is
feminine.
masculine, yeah, and la
Okay.
is feminine.
Okay, right, sorry.
So de isn't specifically feminine or masculine. It can be both. It's just plural because as I've told in the previous lesson, the plural in French is neutral, but not neutral in the way that it is like a new kind of gender. It's just that it's masculine, and we call that neutral. Okay.
Okay.
Any question about maybe du, de la, des, about the article? Nope. No question about that. Okay. So maybe you want to do a pause because we're almost at the break point of the class. I think we're just like going to make a little break for about 5 minutes. Yeah, can someone give me the time maybe in French if they can? So what time is it right now? In French.
3, 4, 12.
Mm. Okay, so in French, it's different than in English because in English, or at least in the English speaking countries that I know, we would use like the 12-hour kind of time. In France, it's really kind of um, we kind of only use the 24-hour schedule. So for example, right now we would say, for example, il est 15, okay? So it's 15:43. Il est 15h43. Okay? But
Okay.
again, you can use both. It's not a problem. I think that most people would understand if you said like, for example, il est 3h43. So it's 3:43. I think that most people would understand, even though we are mostly used um, with the 24-hour clock. Okay. So we're going to do a short little break of about 5 minutes. So it's about 15. So it's 3:44. So I guess we'll see each other in 5 minutes at 3:49. Okay. So go ahead, take a break, cut your cameras, microphone, and just take 5 minutes. Okay. I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so are everyone back? We can start over. Okay. I think that Donna left the class, so she might be coming back later on. Okay. Ça va pour l'instant? Ça va? Oui. Okay. So we're going to continue our talk about hobbies in general. Okay. So now that we have seen what we can do with the verb jouer, okay, we're going to see what we can do or what we can do with the verb jouer, because previously, so we saw about that with the verb faire, okay? So we're going to see with the verb jouer. So does any one of you know the equivalent maybe of the verb jouer in English? Any idea maybe?
Is it play?
Play, yeah. So it's the same pattern as, well, English, where for most activities that don't involve a game, we would use do. But now that we're like maybe like playing a game or a sport that is involving a game, we're going to use the verb jouer. This time we have a different rule. We wouldn't use du, de la, ou des. We would use au, à la, okay, and au, okay. So here again, au, the X is mute. So au at the singular form without the X is the same thing as au with, well, the plural version with an X. It's au and au. So we would use jouer au or à la et au if it's maybe a board game, a game in general. So for example, a ball game and sports that involve a game. At the right, you can see a table with the conjugation that is interesting us right now. Can anyone give it a go with the pronunciation here? So je, tu, il, elle.
J'ai joué. Joué.
Oh, so I'm going to cross it. So
J'ai
it's
joué.
je joue.
Tu joues.
Tu
Il
joues.
joue. Elle joue.
Elle joue. Yep. So it's basically the same thing as before with the verb faire, where we can see that the E is mute, we can't hear it, and the ES also is mute. So it's basically the same pronunciation for the three persons. Je joue, tu joues, il ou elle joue. However, if you're writing that same verb, it's going to be different. You have to be careful about the spelling. But again, the spelling for now is not much of a concern, okay, because we're not writing yet. However, if you're writing and you want to be totally correct about the writing and the spelling, it's going to be critical role into that. Okay. So same thing as before with the introduction of those words, au, à la, and au. So which one is feminine, which one is masculine, and which one is plural? Does anyone have an idea?
The first one, O, is masculine, and then à la, feminine, and O,
Mhm. So you think that Allah is feminine, which is correct, and O is masculine, okay? So we're going to write that here. Okay, so what are the ins here? How do you know that it's masculine, and how do you know that the other is feminine?
Because la.
La, yeah, it's a good int. La is always feminine. And for the plural, so we know because it's the last one that it's going to be o, okay? Can anyone remind me what are the ints you can see in a word that may include or show that it's a plural noun? What is the mark of the plural in English?
The S on the end.
So we have the S, and in French we have the S and the X. So we know because of that X that it's plural, okay? So, any question about that for now? About O, Allah, et O? Nothing? Okay. All right. And then, so we were looking at des jeux, okay? Des jeux, des sports. Now we are going to look at des instruments. So the word instrument is transparent with English, okay? But instead of saying instruments, well, that is actually a good exercise into understanding how do words that are pronounced in French and in English. In English, you hear all the letters in the word, so you can hear instruments. So you would hear the T and S. In French, you would say instrument. So basically, we can't hear those letters. Those two letters form kind of a group which is pronounced as one sound, okay? So here it's un, okay? So the pronunciation is very different. So the pronunciation, I'm going to kind of put it into brackets, okay? So basically it's instrument, kind of. So you don't pronounce the N here. You don't pronounce the N. And neither is here, okay? Could you try maybe to give it a go, Felix Nino? To kind of improve your pronunciation of the word?
Instrument.
Instrument, instrument, because
Yeah. Okay, please, why um some of the pronunciation like the letters don't sound like it is like the I, which is E in French.
Okay, so basically in French, that's something that is very recurrent, is that most letters on their own have just one sound. For example, if we take the letter I in French, it would be I and only I. However, if you're combining it with certain letters, so for example, here we have the letter N, together they would form a, like just a sound together. So they would, it would be un, okay? Same thing with the E here. If you have a E letter on its own, it can be pronounced as E. However, if it's coupled with another consonant, it can be pronounced as en. Okay? So there are quite a bit of variety into those group sounds, which vowels often produce when they're coupled with certain consonants. Okay, so if you're not so sure about the pronunciation, you can always ask. Okay, so here for the word instruments, it's just instrument. Okay. Does that seem kind of clearer to you?
It's clever. I'm still looking at Encoro, pronounced as encore, like steel.
Ah,
And it sounds like the same pronunciation with the
mm,
en.
E and N is en, en.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
De rien. Y a pas de souci. Okay. So last time, just before, we saw that for games we were using O, à la, and O. Okay. But right now we are using du, de la, et des. Okay. So I'm not going to do the same exercise as before. I assume that most of you got what is feminine, what is masculine. Okay, so du is masculine, de la is feminine, and de is plural. Okay, so now we have to know if the noun we are going to use here is either masculine or feminine. So for example, for this one, what is it in English? C'est quoi en anglais?
Violin.
Violin, okay. So how would you try to pronounce that in French? It's almost the same thing.
Violin.
Almost. Okay, it's violon.
Violon.
Violon. And then for the other instrument we have here, what is it?
It's a guitar.
Guitar. And how would you say guitar in French? It's very simple. Just say guitar.
Okay, same.
It's almost the same thing. But instead of guitar, where the R isn't really pronounced, it's kind of something that is like deep in the throat. Guitar, we would say guitarra, which is kind of similar with the way we would pronounce the R's in Spanish or in other languages. So we have guitar. Okay. So it's almost the same thing. Um, the spelling is different because most of the well, all of the feminine common nouns end with an E, okay? So we have the mark of the feminine, okay? And according to you, is violon feminine or masculine?
Masculine.
Masculine, okay. Because, well, we can see here that there's no E. Here we have an E, so we know it's feminine. So we would say du violon, and we would say de la guitare. Okay. So can anyone maybe make a short sentence saying like maybe if any one of you is playing an instrument, Can they try to say it in French? I can start if you prefer, okay? So I'll start. Je joue, okay? Je joue de la basse. Bass is almost the same thing as in English, okay? Bass, bass. Just the pronunciation of the A is different, okay? Because the A in French, we wouldn't pronounce it A, we would pronounce it A. So can anyone try maybe to come up with a sentence about playing a certain instruments? And if you don't have the vocabulary for that same instrument, I'll help you.
Je joue de la guitare.
Je joue de la guitare, très bien, okay. Do you want to try maybe with another instrument?
Je joue de la piano.
Okay, piano. So that's a tricky one because piano is masculine. So
Oh.
what would you say instead of je joue de la piano? So you would use the du.
Du piano.
Ok, je joue du piano. Très bien, merci Log.
Yes.
You want to try, Felix?
Oui.
Mhm.
Je joue de violon.
Alors c'est
And
du.
I want to use the plural.
Oh, the plural. Well, you would use the plural if the instrument is plural. There
Okay.
aren't many instruments that are plural. I can think of one, the maracas, okay?
The tambour, like the drum, is it plural?
Well, for example, drums is a singular noun in French. We would say de la batterie. It's a singular word. Well, the only instrument I can think of which is plural is maracas. So for example, you would say je joue des maracas.
Okay.
Well, another plural instrument. Yeah, I'm not so sure because drums is a singular noun in French. Okay. Anyone wants to know maybe if an instrument is masculine, feminine? So we talked about la guitare, le violon, le piano. Any other guesses maybe? Nope. Okay. So do you have any question about du, de la, and des? Okay. Nope. No question. Okay. So we're going to make kind of a short exercise here, okay? About completing a text with either, well, jouer, okay? So jouer au, jouer du, préféré. What is préféré? C'est quoi préfère? It's the same thing as in
Preference.
English. Yeah, it's preferring, okay? And au, du, au, okay? So what is going to be very important is the word that is following, okay? So who wants to start with the first sentence? Anyone wants to try? Yeah, okay, merci Bethune.
Je m'appelle Louis, j'ai 21 et j'aime basketball, mon petit.
So you would end here, but would you use jouons au Joue du, préfère, jouons au, jouer du ou jouer au. So which one would you use here? Do you
Jouer,
want, yeah?
jouer deux.
So we saw that, for example, with de, du, de la, des was for instruments.
Ah, yeah. Jouer au.
Jouer au. So we would use this one. Okay. Jouer au. I'll just write it here. Okay. Jouer au basketball. Okay. So basketball is a masculine noun. Okay. And how would you pronounce this here? J'ai. So you said j'ai 20 ans. Yeah. Is that correct? So same thing here. The S is mute because it is the mark of the plural, so we wouldn't hear it. Okay. Merci Bethan. Si tu veux, tu peux continuer. You can continue if you want to, if nobody is volunteering. Felix, you want to try? Tu veux essayer?
Oui, oui.
Ouais, ok. Merci Bethan. À toi Félix.
Mon petit frère
Mhm.
Enzo préfère la musique
Très bien.
et préfère tambour.
Il préfère tambour.
Il préfère.
So we
Okay, okay, this is an instrument.
Mhm.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
cannot use okay, then we'll use il joue du
Il joue du, très bien. Il joue
tambour.
du tambour. Okay.
Oui.
So tambour is a masculine noun. Je joue du, enfin, il joue du tambour. Okay. Next sentence. Anyone volunteering? Okay.
I can go.
Okay. So
Manger,
moi je.
moi j'ai, that's like some, oh, moi j'ai,
So this
oh,
is
préféré,
je
moi j'ai
préfère.
préféré, yeah,
Je.
moi j'ai préféré les tambours,
Ok, très bien. Moi je préfère. Tu peux continuer.
euh, ça fait du bruit,
So same thing here. The final letter isn't pronounced. We
ah,
would say
bruit,
bruit.
bruit, bruit, ok,
Bruit.
j'ai, je préfère la guitare,
Ok, très bien.
la guitare,
Je préfère la guitare. Ok.
yeah. Avec mes amis et Enzo,
Mhm.
nous, euh,
So this is another
yeah.
pronoun. What is nous in English?
Oh,
Do you know what's
it's
the pronoun nous?
pronounced
Mhm.
new. Um, he they.
Oui,
It's we. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it would be this one. Jouons.
Okay.
Okay. How
Jouons,
would you pronounce jouons here?
jouons au Monopoly.
Mhm.
Nous jouons au Monopoly
Très bien.
tous les week-ends. Nous aimons jouer ensemble.
Jouer. Same thing here. The E is mute.
Ensemble.
Ensemble.
Ensemble. Ensemble. Okay, ensemble. Et avec nos cousins. Cousin?
Mm.
Cousin? Is it that?
It's
cousins or cousin?
Cousin.
cousin, yeah.
Cousin,
So
okay.
it's the same thing as we saw before, where the E and, well, the I and N are forming a singular sound, okay, which is un. So nos
Ah.
cousins.
Cousin.
Yep.
Et avec nos cousins, Sally et Yanis ne euh,
So
jeux vidéo. So
nous,
it would be ne jouons en jeux vidéo.
nous jouons aux jeux vidéo. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, jeux en jeux vidéo. Yeah.
So is it well, singular or plural here?
Plural, right?
Plural. And we can know basically because with the noun there's an X, which is the mark of the plural. And we also have the S, which is also another mark of the plural.
So whenever there is an X with the noun, it's, you know, that's a plural word.
So the X is not the most common mark of the plural with nouns. Usually it would be an S, but if a noun ends with an X, it's basically the same thing as with an S because it's the plural tense.
Okay. And can you just explain one more time? Because there is like a difference of spelling. There is Jouons and then there is Jouer. So is it the same thing as a pronoun, like plural and singular?
So basically, so we talked a little bit about the conjugation of French verbs. We
Yeah.
saw that here, for example, you have jouer. This is the infinitive. It would be like to play. However, jouer, you can also see jouer, for example, in sentences. But it would be the same thing as in English with the ing version, which is the, I don't know how you say it in English, but the gerundive, maybe? Gerundive, gerund, maybe? I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. But it's basically when a verb with the ing form can also be a noun in a sentence. Okay, so here,
Ah, okay.
so for example, it's not conjugated, jouer. It isn't conjugated. And the
Okay.
difference here with jouons, for example, is the pronoun that is used. So we saw that in English it was very simple because you don't have many differences between certain conjugation and certain pronouns. However, in English, in French, it's very different because depending on the person, the spelling is going to be different. For example, the in jouons, the ONS is the mark of the first person plural, so the we. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
so
Merci beaucoup.
this is just an affair of conjugation and the pronouns. Okay. Any question about that? Or does it seem clear to you for now? Okay, I'll take that as an answer. Okay, so I think that we're going to finish by talking about his or their taste, okay? So taste in French is goût, okay? So there's on the screen multiple ways to express your taste. So for example, Felix Nino, uh, before you told that, what was the meaning of adorer? For example, in the sentence, j'adore.
I love.
Yeah. I love. Could you maybe try to continue? Est-ce que tu pourrais continuer?
I like.
J'aime, okay. In the context of a sentence. And maybe someone can try with the rest. So here is basically ne pas aimer. What does it mean?
I dislike.
I dislike or I don't like. Okay. And the last one is détester, hate. Yeah. Despise, hate, like just something that you don't like at all. Okay, so all those expressions are verbs, okay? Another way of recognizing certain verbs in French, for example, if they're at the infinitive form, is the ER at the end, okay, which is pronounced E. So, for example, we know that those are words or those are verbs, okay? I'm not going to do a little deep dive into the classification of verbs in French because it's very complicated and very different from English. For example, we have 3 groups of verbs and their endings, the end of their spelling is going to be different. So here we have like what we call the first group verbs, which end with the ER, okay? So in the context of sentences, they would be kind of conjugated and spelled the same way. As you can see in j'adore, it's basically the same spelling as in j'aime, and also the same thing as in je déteste, okay? But something that is very important here is the adding of the negation with ne pas. Okay, so that's something that we're going to take a look at. There's a big difference between j'aime ou je n'aime pas, okay? So we'll take the example of je n'aime pas le rugby. So what is different from the, let's say, the affirmative version, which is j'aime le football? What can we see that is added into the negation? Je n'aime pas le rugby.
Nay and pas?
So this one is the N, and we call it an apostrophe, okay? And then we have pas, okay. So basically, there's a rule in French which kind of facilitates the pronunciation of certain words, which is present in English with, for example, the article and un, okay? So for example, you would see un, for example, with the, if a noun ends or starts with a vowel sound, for example, an animal, so you can kind of facilitate the pronunciation. There's the same thing in French, where, for example, the N apostrophe here is the contraction of ne, okay? But it would be really complicated to say, for example, je ne aime pas le rugby. So in order for it to be easier, we just kind of say, okay, we're going to delete that E and replace it with an apostrophe so that it is way easier to pronounce. So we would say, je n'aime pas le rugby, okay? So we would see any or an apostrophe, okay? So basically what you can see on the screen is that we are going to put the N, ne, okay, which is the equivalent in English of not, okay? And then we're going to use pas. So we have more examples here. For example, je n'aime pas la piscine, okay? Here we have a feminine article. In je n'aime pas le tennis, a masculine article. So we know that tennis is masculine and piscine feminine. Okay. Does anyone want to try and give it a go? For example, with a sport they don't like or an activity they don't like? I can start maybe if no one's volunteering. So for example, I would say j'aime le basketball, okay? But I would also say je n'aime pas la course. Okay. Can anyone maybe want to try with a different sport, a different activity? Maybe Beth and Donna, maybe? Felix?
I could try.
Mhm.
J'aime dance.
J'aime danser, okay.
Danser. Do I have to add la or les or something?
So for example, you would
J'aime
have,
la danser.
so for example, if you would use a verb at the infinitive version, like j'aime danser, you wouldn't have to use the article before because it's not really a noun, it's still a verb just at the infinitive version. But
Okay.
if you would use the noun version of the verb danser, you could use an article. For example, la, because danser or danse is a feminine noun. So you would say j'aime la danse.
Okay.
And maybe about a sport
So
or an activity that you don't like.
je n'aime pas editing.
Editing?
Yeah. It's an activity.
Okay. So like maybe video editing. You
Yeah.
mean like that? Okay. So we'd call it montage.
Montage. Je n'aime
Montage. Yeah.
pas montage.
Je n'aime pas le montage because it's a masculine word. Okay.
Ah, je n'aime pas le montage. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that you can know beforehand. It's not possible that you can know that a certain noun is masculine or
Je
feminine.
n'aime pas le codage.
For example,
J'aime le tennis. Je n'aime pas le...
so Felix, you don't like coding? Tu n'aimes pas le codage?
Wait.
Oui, tu n'aimes pas le codage? Okay. So here you can see like the same thing. Codage is masculine. We would say le codage. Okay. So we're going to finish off right here with maybe some other students who want to participate. So maybe Felix, Nino, you can try to make the whole sentence yourself.
J'aime la foot. J'aime le foot.
Très bien.
Je n'aime pas le ski.
Ok, très bien. Je n'aime pas le ski.
Eh oui.
Très bien. Merci, merci Félix.
De
Karen,
rien.
tu veux essayer, Kara?
Yep. J'aime le ballet.
Le ballet, très bien.
Je n'aime pas la ski as well.
Le ski, because it's masculine. However, be sure because this, I don't think it's the same thing, but for example, ballet and ballet is the same pronunciation, okay? So ballet, the spelling, same spelling as in English, it would be the ballet. But if you spell it this way, ballet, it's a broom. So again, spelling matters in certain situations. Okay. Maybe Bethan, you want to try Loga, Bella, if you can hear us.
Yeah. J'aime la natation.
Très bien.
Je n'aime pas le rugby.
Le rugby. Très bien. Tiens, très très bien. Merci, Bethan. Loga, tu veux essayer? Do you want to try, Loga, if you can hear us? If your microphone is working, maybe.
J'aime le volleyball.
J'aime le volleyball, très bien.
Je n'aime pas le golf.
Le golf. Très bien. Okay. So as you can see that for the vocabulary in sports in general, it's almost the same thing. It's like basketball, volleyball, handball is the same thing as in French and English. Okay. What do you mean by volleyball, bon, Felix? What do you mean by
There's the
volleyball?
expression, oh, volleyball, good.
Ah, yeah. Well, we saw last time that there was a difference between bien and bon. Bon would be more for something that tastes good, for example, food. Here we would say bien. For example, the same thing as when you would say je vais bien. Okay?
Très bien. Merci.
De rien. Okay. So do you have any questions for now about what we saw today? Anybody a question?
Yes.
Mhm.
I was expected to actually ask the question later on. You brought it up because there are so many letters
Mhm.
or so many words in French that have the same pronunciation.
Yeah, it's very common. Or
and-
the difference is very um, subtle. Yeah, it's very subtle. Um, and it's for example, it's the role of the accents in French. For example, with this accent and this other accent. So the first one would be pronounced e, which is kind of going up, okay? And the other is e. So the difference again is very subtle. And it's something that is very recurring with French, is that, well, the pronunciation is very similar in certain words. So again, that's something that has to do with pronunciation and also listening. So that's going to come later on. Okay. Any question about maybe the class? Anything really? Any remarks, demands to make? Whatever, really.
Please, could you go through like how you pronounce in the box on the screen?
Okay,
The
for the verb, yeah. So it's j'aime, okay? Tu aimes, elle aime. So for those three, it's the same pronunciation. Then we have nous aimons, okay? So you can hear the S because we kind of do this little link between the two words. Nous aimons, okay? Vous aimez, same thing. Et ils aiment, okay? So you can see on the screen that I've kind of crossed out certain letters that you can't hear here. And the same thing is in here. Okay. So yeah, that's French conjugation for you. It's much more complex than in English. Okay. Any other question, demand, maybe? Nothing at all? Assignments. So there's no assignments, as I'm sure that you're pretty busy with yourself. with maybe work, class, depending on what you do. Again, I'll drop the kind of support or the presentation on the Google Drive. So if you want to kind of go back and get a look in it, you're free to go. Otherwise, next time we see each other, so on Tuesday, there's going to be the reviewing where we're going to practice a little bit about what we saw today. So this is like the assignment, if you want. Like it's just to be kind of clear about today's class. Okay? But I won't give you any assignment as I think that it would be counterproductive here, especially since you're beginners and that maybe like learning and working without guidance may be a little bit harder. Okay. Any other question? D'autres questions? No? Kara, any question maybe?
No, you've been very helpful. I was just going to say I unfortunately have to leave, so
Yeah,
merci.
well, that's the end of the class, so I think that you're all free to go. So if you have any question, you can just write me an email or whatever. And I guess we'll see each other on Tuesday, so at 1 p.m. Okay?
Thank you, Adriel. Merci.
Merci à toi, Chiara. Merci d'être venu. Passe un bon
Thank
week-end.
you. Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Okay.
Bon week-end à tous.
Bon week-end. À mardi.
Merci, bon week-end.
De rien, le gars. Passe un bon week-end. Au revoir.